super, super highlights, and I was gonna whittle it down, but there's just no way.
I don't know.
I mean, I've got like 35 or 40 right now so far. Looks like we're live.
Apparently we are.
Okay. Trying to make sure this thing connects. Should be connected very soon, guys.
I'm showing you live.
Yeah, me too.
All right. All right. Looks like we are live. All right. Well, this episode is my roundtable where we're going to talk about our favorite albums of 1972. I limited it to 5 because if we had like 10, I think we'd be here probably into the evening time. So, and you know, because and it's not so much as how like a top 5 list, where it's just more something favorites that connected with you in one way or another. And I'll start off, and then we'll just kind of go through with everybody. And my first pick is Black Sabbath Volume 4. I got into Black Sabbath in early 90s, I believe it was. So, very late into the game, over 18 years after this was released. So, but they really connected to me, and it actually started with a previous album, Masters of Reality, where I thought that was their climb, and Masters Volume 4, Sabbath, Holy Sabbath, and Sabotage to me were like at least of the Ozzy years was their pinnacle, moment, because I've been listening to this repeatedly for months now, just getting into it and, watching people's, reaction videos on YouTube, some very, very comical as to what they say. I always find it interesting when people maybe in their 20s and 30s, when they react to music, they just have, sometimes it's like you get to relive that moment that you first interacted with it, when you first bought it, and this one all the way through, I mean, great songs, ranging from very heavy to, got that song Changes, which is a little piano ballad, it's just an overall really good album. And this was, I guess, at the time where the term heavy metal wasn't coined yet. So, I watched a lot of interviews, and, the band considered themselves at the time hard rock. So I was very pleasantly surprised with the music. I don't really think in the 70s they had a bad album. I mean, it's more good albums and then some lesser good, you know, because at the end of the 70s, you had Technical Ecstasy and Never Say Die. And, you know, a lot of people, it gets mixed reactions because that was at a, their downfall, you know, in the 70s. So then my next one is Deep Purple, Machine Head. This is another one. Again, I got into them in the 80s when Perfect Strangers came out. And I immediately at that time cassettes. So I got as many of the older cassettes as I can. And of course, obviously, this is their most famous album. And that all the hits, it's constantly played on the radio today. And of course, you know, obviously everybody knows the Smoke on the Water. You know, that's I don't think you could call yourself a rock band and not know that song. So then another one I got into, I want to say in the mid-90s, was Roxy Music. And this one, it's just so eclectic on how it was like borrowing from old and then combining it with new stuff, you know, because of Eno with all those little electronic treatments he put onto the songs. And, you know, they range from, you know, I guess some people put them in the progressive rock camp, and some people put them more in the glam rock camp. So it's like, you know, and I think there's a little bit of both. I mean, of course, you got Virginia Plain. That was their thing. Remake, remodel, and a Ladytron. And I got this. I got that little deluxe one that has the BBC sessions, you know, Peak Appeal sessions from '72, and a concert on that too. So it's a nice little book. I often wondered if they're going to ever do the rest of their catalog in this kind of a format, you know, because it'd be really cool. And this was a recent. I got into this band recently, and Uriah, Heep, Demons and Wizards. This is one album for me personally. I have to listen to it all the way through. It's like, it's not just like listen to like a couple songs and then, you know, okay, whatever, you know, because obviously it had their hit Easy Living on it, which I think it's on most classic rock stations is played to death. You know, they can't play the other stuff. You know, Easy Living is a good song, but you know, there's a lot better songs on this than that. And my last one, which I got into this band in the early 80s, Close to the Edge, yes. My entry point actually was that Classic Yes album that they put out, you know, a compilation. And obviously from there, you know, it's like you gotta find out where the songs, you know, the original albums come from. So you gotta go. I got this one. This is the one that they did through Rhino, not the Steven Wilson mix, which I looked on Amazon, and that's expensive, you know, about $30, $40 for the CD. So it's like, you know, a little outside of my price range, but you know, this still is great songs. I mean, obviously the title track and the whole thing, you know, and You and I and Siberian Khatru. I mean, those are my picks. Now, we'll go on to Gary.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to start right where you left off because Close to the Edge is definitely there for me. You know, all of these sort of, most of these have real personal connections for me. Yes is without question my favorite band, and this was the album that turned me on to them. The funny thing was, the first time I heard it, I hated it. I bought it at a garage sale. I bought 2 records at a garage sale. I bought this and, well, not this copy. I've worn out multiple copies of this over the years. But I bought this in a Bob Dylan live album for $0.25 each. And I brought Close to the Edge home, put it on. And I thought, what on earth is this horrible stuff? I was 12 years old, you know?
Right.
I had never, I was an Elton John fanatic. I had never heard anything like that. And so I just sort of put it away for about 6 months. And I dug it out and I thought, well, I remember hating this, but I don't remember what it sounded like. Put it on. And I thought, you know, that's not that bad. So then maybe a week later, I put it on again and thought, wait a minute, this is really good. And then I listened to it again, and it didn't leave my turntable for about a month and a half. That was the only thing I listened to. I was sold. And then I started getting into the rest of the Yes catalog. And I remember when I got Fragile and said, Roundabout, I've heard that song before. I didn't know that was them. And, you know, and I became just a total Yes fanatic and still am to this day. And that album is just, that was, in fact, my favorite album by anyone until Queensryche released Operation Mindcrime, and I was blown away by that. Now it's in the number 2 slot, but still that's very, you know, very respectable. And it was my gateway into progressive rock, because from then I started discovering a lot of other bands. So that's a huge one for me and always will be. And another one of mine is going to be a repeat from your list, which is Sabbath Volume 4. Now, it's interesting, the first 3 on my list are all my 3 favorite bands. Sabbath is my second favorite band. And, you know, Volume 4 is a little odd in some ways. I mean, it's got that weird little radar sounding piece that's kind of odd. But the funny thing about Sabbath that I think a lot of people miss, other than the only 2 albums I can think of in their entire catalog where the 2 albums are very similar, are Heaven and Hell and Mob Rules. Other than that, every single album they did is very different than the album that preceded it. They were always experimenting, changing their sound around. And even within the album, I mean, you've got, like you said, you've got an acoustic guitar solo piece. You've got Changes, which is a straight up piano ballad thing. You've got so much different. And then it's actually got, there are 2 favorite Sabbath songs of mine, one of which is Megalomania from Sabotage, and the other one is Snowblind from Volume 4. And I remember, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, I was trying to put together a Black Sabbath tribute because there were like 2 singers who I can pull off. And one of them is Ozzy and the other one's Jim Morrison. I couldn't find anybody to do a Doors tribute. So we tried to do a Sabbath tribute. We only ever had one rehearsal, but we did Snowblind. And we were standing there. This guy, the drummer, had like this PA, this professional PA system, right? And I'm standing there in the middle of this wall of sound of Snowblind. And it was just, I don't know, just being in a band and experiencing the sound that everybody's creating is something special anyway. But man, that minor key section that's in the middle of that, it was just, I've never felt anything like that. It was amazing. I would love to do that again anytime. So yeah, that's a very special album for me. And then the third one, from my third favorite band, Hawkwind, Doremi, Fasol, Latido, which is their third album. And I mentioned something about this on social media recently. To me, their first 3 albums are pretty special because they're all very different from each other, but they're all just amazing albums. This one is the one that's probably the heaviest. It has their space rock sound, but it's also really heavy. And it's sort of, everything flows together really well. You really can't separate the things from each other. It's just sort of like one long experience. And I think that's really cool. And I mean, they've got some really classic songs on there too. I think if you wanted a sort of a first introduction to Hawkwind to get an idea of what the heavier space rock sound is, that would be the album to get without question, because it's just a very perfect album. And the other 2 I picked, again, it comes down, sometimes these things come down to personal things. I had, when I was getting into a lot of the weirder rock music in the 70s, I had some guys I went to school with who were ahead of me on that, in that they were already introduced to a lot of this music, and they were like, man, you got to look out for this album. There were a couple albums they had me on the lookout for that were kind of really hard to find. So when I eventually found them, I already had high expectations, and these things lived up to them. The first one was the debut Captain Beyond album, which, I mean, Captain Beyond was one of the early supergroups, because you had Rod Evans, who had been the lead singer in Deep Purple, and then you had two of the guys from Iron Butterfly. And again, that's an album that's just sort of an experience from beginning to end. And good luck trying to classify it. Some of it's proggy, some of it's psychedelic. It's all hard rock mostly, but it's just amazing. And nothing else ever has sounded like that, I don't think. It's just a very special album. I mean, they did two more studio albums after that, and there's a version of the band that goes out and tours every once in a while. And, you know, that's great. I'm glad they are. But every album they did too was very different. I like them all, but that one's very, very special. There's just some magic to it that I don't know. And then the third one was the other one that people had me looking out for, which is the debut album for White Witch. Now, White Witch is a band a lot of people haven't heard of, I think. And they were out of Florida. And they only ever did two albums. This was the first one. Most people prefer this album. I like both of their albums a lot. They came up with the name for the band because they were trying to sort of counterpoint themselves to bands like Black Sabbath. They figured that they had all this dark and evil stuff. They wanted to be the positive. And, you know, there's a very positive sort of message, but the music on it is, again, really hard to pinpoint. They've got like this Nice to Be Stoned, which is an old ragtime song, which is pretty cool. You know, a tribute to weed, of course. And then you've got some seriously hard rocking stuff, some very psychedelic sounding things. I should mention, there is one line of lyrics in this album that's kind of questionable, especially looking back on it now. I don't think at the time they meant anything, because they were very much about a positivity and stuff, and they were using it as an analogy. But there's a line that says, just like a black, I was sitting in the back. And it was, you know, it was meant to be a metaphor. It was a poorly chosen metaphor, even for the time, I think. But, you know, a bunch of guys from Florida, a bunch of hippies from Florida, they probably didn't think about it that way. And certainly in retrospect, it looks a lot worse than it was. But everything else on here is very positive. And it's just, and I should mention Ron Goddard, I think that's how you pronounce his name, who was the lead singer. I've never heard anybody who sounds like him. He could sing sort of almost bluesy and then just get really crazy, like almost later heavy metal screams, and then literally scream. And it all worked. And pretty much every song, even a ballad, he'll throw some of those screams in there, which is kind of crazy. You know, sadly, he passed away in 2000, I think. They were working on trying to get a reunion of the band, and he wound up dying, and so there's never be any more White Witch. But yeah, that's my five.
All right. Wow. You know, I wrote those last three down, and so I'm going to be on the lookout for those ones, because I'm always anything new for me, you know. So we got Nick's pick.
You know, I didn't bring a show and tell, unfortunately.
That's all right.
If I did, you guys wouldn't be able to see me. But anyways, seriously, you know, in 1972, I really wasn't listening to a lot of stuff that came out in 72, because I was only 12, I think. Yeah, I believe 12. And so the stuff that I was listening to back then seemed to be Creedence Clearwater, you know, for example, the Guess Who, the Supremes, the Mamas and the Papas, you know, stuff like that. But 76, which is just a mere 4 years later, I started working in the music industry in a record store. And I got to tell you, I'm looking at this list from 1972, and other than the fine print stuff, I could almost guarantee that I have almost 80% of the stuff that's on the list from 1972.
Hey,
So it was really, really, huh?
could I interrupt for 1 second? I
Yeah.
just realized something because I was talking to Ron before we went on. Ron, you worked in a record shop at one time.
Yeah.
I worked in my first job was in a record, so we all share that.
Right.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
So in 1976, when I started working there, I worked in a shop that, well, back then we really didn't have categories like progressive or heavy metal. You had hard rock, you had psychedelic might have been there, you know, with bands like Nectar or Genesis or Yes, but it really wasn't a coin that was termed as, you know, you really had rock and jazz and pop and blues, very basic stuff. And to this day, I think categories are great now because there's so much music out there. And it's great to kind of, if someone asks something, you can kind of veer them in a direction. But at the same token, I'm not a big fan of labels, even though I all right. And I just believe that the music should stand on its own 2 feet for what it is. And I believe most music, almost all music does. I can't think of much music that doesn't. So thinking about this, there were a few things that I did hear in 1972 when this stuff was coming out. And one of them, it's in my top 3, and I'm going to name my top 3, but I don't know which one would be.
I think we lost him for a second.
Just an amazing album. It had, you know, for example, Old Man, A Needle and the Damage Done. I mean, 3 really amazing singles off that album.
Right.
You can't go wrong with that album.
Which album? Which album is that? It's Neil Young. Which album? Because you were sort of locked for a minute. Is it Harvest?
Harvest.
Yeah, great
Harvest.
album.
Though the guy can't do no wrong. I mean, even as off the wall stuff that just you're like, what the hell is he doing? Has some really great material on it, right?
Right.
The next one was probably another one that I discovered in 72 because of a song called Frankenstein. You all might remember this, the Edgar Winter group. They only come out at night. And I can't tell you how many young kids didn't want to learn how to play that song.
Right.
I was in high school, and I wanted to take band just so I could learn how to play that song. What a great song. That keyboard solo is just unbelievable, you know. And they performed that song. They happened to play with a band that Ron was talking about, Deep Purple. You guys still there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I lost my screen here. Give me a second here. Not that it really matters. There you guys go. That was my wife trying to call. So
Thumbs up.
Now he's locked again.
up there in my top 3. My top third one, again, like I said, I don't have I can't tell you which one I like the best out of these 3.
Right.
But I'd have to say Steely Dan's Can't Buy a Thrill. Another one that I discovered in 72, you know. And God, there were so many hits on that album, and so many. I mean, you had Rick Derringer from the McCoys that was on there, you know. I mean, it's just an amazing album.
Did Steely Dan ever do a bad album?
I don't think so. And I find it, and we're going to go see them in a couple weeks here, or a couple months.
Nice.
We bought 3 years ago, and due to the pandemic, it got put off, then it got put off again. Finally, we're now on again. So we'll see how that goes. So those are the top three, but they're not in any particular order.
Right.
Hey, Ron, did you hear his second? Because he was locked up on my end.
Yeah, I got a little locked up, but I got the tail end of what, Steely Dan, yeah.
No,
Yeah,
Steely
and
was
Edgar
three.
Winter was number 2.
Oh,
Edgar Winter.
Yeah.
That's right.
So they're not really numbered in the right order because I don't know what the order would be.
Right.
But for 72, for me as a child discovering music, I mean, the Partridge Family, I love the Partridge Family back then, right? And I mean, if you were a child in 72 or high school or junior high, you couldn't not hear the Partridge Family or the Michael or the Jackson.
I was 6.
Well, then you were probably singing along.
72, I was 9. So yeah, I didn't discover any of this stuff until
God,
later.
you guys are still youngins.
Yeah. Honestly, for me, music didn't click until the 80s. I mean, up until that point, everything I listened to was on the car radio, whatever my parents were playing, or if there was music on a TV show. Other than that, I didn't own anything at that time because it just didn't. I didn't connect with music until the 80s, and then didn't really connect until the 90s. That was really the time where it's like, where this thing started building.
My first album was Cosmo Factory by Creedence Clearwater that I purchased myself.
Mine was Elton John, Captain Fantastic and the Brown Dirt Cowboy. I saved up my allowance to go buy it.
What a great album.
But yeah, I still love the album to this day. I'm still a big Elton John fan, but in the 70s I was playing in bands and stuff. Never any band that ever got anywhere, obviously, but I was playing music and I was big into music. I had a big record collection already then.
My first one, and it wasn't the first purchase, it was the first one someone gave me in 1980, Rush Permanent Waves for my birthday. And I looked it up, it was just released in January of 1980, and my birthday was in April. So it's like, my friend gave me this, it was on cassette, he gave it to me, and I was like going, well, it's a cool looking cassette, and I put it in. It's like, after that, then I understood why he gave it to me. He said, you gotta like this band. And I honestly, my first album I probably bought, it's either gotta be Classic Yes, Queen's Greatest Hits, or ELP's first album. Those are the first ones I remember. And then after that, building up and getting other stuff. But I think those would be the first 3 that I bought. I don't remember which was the actual first one, but I bought them. I remember where I bought them. Kmart. I bought them in Kmart. I think they were like
I remember
$2.99.
The first singles I remember buying were at Kmart, and I remember I bought them the same day I bought Killer Queen by Queen and Carry On Wayward Son by Kansas on single. And I remember that was at a Kmart store.
So
right.
My last 2 albums, these are toughies because I'm like I said, I can post this list on social media from Wikipedia, and I literally have probably got 80% or have had releases. And you were talking about the Yes album that you guys were both talking about, and I didn't get into Yes until it might have been 76 or 78. I think it was the Triple Live album.
Yes songs.
Yes songs. I love that album, but I still didn't get into the band in a singular album fashion till probably the 80s, maybe even the 90s. It might have been the second gen of Yes or the third gen that I finally started getting into them. But I do love the band now. But they just, Anderson's voice was something that really kind of was like an acquired taste.
Right.
I was that way with Geddy Lee and Rush.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Same here.
I heard
Yeah.
Rush multiple times and it never clicked with me because the voice didn't really do it. Then I saw him on Don Kirshner's rock concert doing Xanadu, and I had to go out and get that album the next day. And I still didn't like his voice, but it grew on me as I got to loving the album.
Yeah, All the World's a Stage was the first one I got by them. Again, I agree with you. His voice took a lot of time for me to get used to it, but the music itself with that, because to me, I understand that the voice is an instrument. A lot of people don't get that.
Right.
Because you can replace a guitarist, you can replace a drummer, a violinist. You may not get the same songwriting structure, but anyone that is talented and educated and can read and write music, or maybe not even read, write, but even play by ear, can generally pull off someone else's guitar licks or someone else's drum licks.
And if you're a guitarist, you can go buy a different guitar, you can get different effects pedals and change the sound. But as a vocalist, you've got this. That's it. You can put some effects on it, but you're stuck with what you've got.
Yeah, there's only a few people that have been able to pull it off in history. Bon Scott's one of them. Only a few. But anyway, so got to go back to the next two albums. God, this is so tough. You guys are killing me. So I'm going to pull a stunt on both of you. I'm going to pull two live albums from my last two.
Okay.
One of them you talked about, Ron, and that would be the album that you didn't choose, but I chose, which is Live in Japan. That album was a greatest hits album without being a greatest hits album.
Right.
Because I think almost every song on that album made airplay at some point. Some of them, there are a couple of them they had to cut down because, 20-minute Richie Blackmore solo just didn't cut it. And so the other one is, talking about all this stuff, it doesn't seem like I'm much of a prog head, but I got to tell you, my first prog band I ever got into was in 1969. Was It's a Beautiful Day. In 1969, the second band I got into was the Moody Blues. But they weren't. I didn't know the term prog, and I was very, very young. I was 10 years old. So the next one is my final out of the 5. And again, it was just so slam full of tasty songs that I grew up with up to that point. And that's Neil Diamond's Hot August Night.
Oh, yeah.
That had so many hits on it, so many great songs, so many memories. And the one thing you said earlier on, and I think you're right, I think I think music is one of those things that conjures up memories. Yeah. I can remember the very first song I heard, the very first time I kissed a girl. I can still remember that song. No, I'm not going to tell you what it is, but
right.
I can remember the very first song I heard when my brother passed away. And every time I hear that song now, I think of my brother, just immediate. So music is definitely one of those things that it's like food. If you've ever, I enjoy good food. I don't enjoy to eat just to eat. I don't enjoy to go and stuff my face and get,
Right.
But I do enjoy a good meal prepared properly. And it's the same thing. If you have that, if you walk by in the mall and you smell something, it automatically brings back a certain memory, whether it's patchouli, and you remember as a kid, some girl used to wear patchouli or whatever.
Right.
And music's the same way. It definitely conjures up memories, and whether it's good or bad.
Well, that Hot August Night, okay, again, 1972, I was 6 years old. I do remember, because that was at the Greek Theater in Los Angeles. And I do remember we were we were trying to get down into go to Hollywood, and we had to have a detour because there was, you know, big amounts of cars kind of going up to the Greek theater. So it's like we had to take a detour. So whenever someone mentions that, you know, August night, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, we were stuck in traffic. You know, it was just, and later on, years later, I went to a concert at the Greek theater. My very first one was Berlin and Talk Talk.
Wow.
So it's like I went to that, but I didn't have the greatest experience because the people in front of me, like 2 or 3 rows in front, were very rowdy, and you know, that was 1982. So and I smelled something that's kind of stank, and I'm like going, you know, I was like, okay, you know, that's cool, but you know, I didn't mind that part. You know, that didn't take away from the concert. It was just the rowdy people. I mean, yelling at the stage, you know, some obscenities and stuff like that. And I'm like going, just sit down and listen to the music. It's almost the same as today now. You know, everybody has their camera up. You know, I understand you want to relive the experience over and over again, but you're taking away from the actual experience of watching your favorite band up on the stage. You know, you're taken away from that. So it's like, to me, it's like, okay, yeah, it'd be nice to go home and watch your concert on your little, you know, your little screen on your phone. But then you probably missed something that was really cool that happened on stage, you know. So it's like,
there's something funny about that, Ron. I read maybe 8, 9 years ago, I read a study that they did at some university where they took 2 groups of college students and they had them attend 2 different events. And the first event, one of the groups had to do it on their phone, record the whole thing on their phone. And the other one was just supposed to not have phones out and, you know, just watch and be in the moment. And then they reversed which group did what for the second event, and they gave them quizzes on it. What they found was the group that had their phone up the whole time didn't really remember the event. No. The other group did, because they weren't really in the moment. They were busy trying to get it on their phone. And it's like, so you're actually taking the event from yourself in a way. You're not experiencing it the same way.
Right.
Yeah, so there's 2 things about that thought, because I shot my sister's wedding, her first wedding. And because I was the photographer, and I'm not a photographer, but I was the photographer, I must have gone through like 10 or 15 rolls of film. I do not remember anything about the wedding. Unless I'm looking at a photograph, I'm going, that you did that? That happened?
Right.
Exactly.
And number 2, and so that thing that we just talked about, I think it's really funny because I watch people that are shooting these videos, and every once in a while you have someone up there that's, you know, holding it straight, but most people are doing this number, right? I'm like, now you're going to play that back? It's just going to be a gigantic blur,
right?
And I just, you know, you're drunk, you're having a good time. And not only that, how many people actually go back to their phone? And I've got, you know, I'm an analog guy, so I love photographs. I love a photo book. I've got thousands and thousands of photos in the cloud, on my computer, on my phone. And unless I'm looking for one, I'll never see them.
Right.
You know, I just, give me the old-fashioned real thing. I want to hold it in my hand. I want something tangible.
Oh yeah.
Something I can put out on the table, and if to knowing my friends, oh, that was you when you were, you know, whatever. Sure. I'm not going to hand someone my phone. Here, go through my phone and, you know, check out my photos.
Right.
Exactly.
Just doesn't work. Same thing with my music. I want a physical product. I want vinyl. I want CDs. I don't want to have a digital library.
No, I won't mess with digital copies. I just won't. And I might listen to a little snippet or something, or of something on streaming, or if it's like, oh, I remember this song, and I'll pop it up on YouTube. But if I want to really experience music, it's either a CD or vinyl or even cassette. I've still got a lot of cassettes. I still have a functional cassette deck over here, you know. But it's got to be something that I can hold in my hand and experience.
Exactly. Yeah, I had a show months back where we were talking about the physical media versus streaming of all things, and I kind of put the digital media with the physical because it's actually something that you purchase. And I had a friend of mine. I was looking for a certain CD, and he did a reply to one of my posts saying, "Wow, you really hung up on physical media." And then I replied back, "Damn straight, I don't. I mean, the idea of having the CD in your hand, say this is mine, But if you're going to go listen to that album on Spotify, what if next week, for whatever, licensing reasons or whatnot, it's taken down? You can't listen to that no more. I can't.
Yeah, I always say the exact same thing. And when it comes to movies too, people are always like, "Oh, I'll just watch it on Netflix." Okay. And what if one day Netflix doesn't have it anymore? If you have the DVD or the Blu-ray, you can still watch it. But if suddenly, because of some licensing reason or whatever, it moves to a different streaming service, or it just goes away completely because they didn't have enough people viewing it, you're out of luck. It's gone.
Yeah, and now I think it's really funny because they're selling the movie. But again, same thing. If Life, for whatever reason, you don't actually physically own it because you can't just loan it to somebody. You're leasing it. You're leasing a digital product. You don't own it.
Right. And I've literally heard of people who have bought download versions of albums and like in Apple iStore or Apple Store or whatever. And something happens to their hard drive. They lose the album. They go back. They have the license for it, but it turns out that version of the album is no longer available.
Exactly.
So buy it over again because they don't have the license for the new version.
How many times have you turned on your iTunes player on your computer and you go to play an album, it's got a different album cover on it, not the one that you put on there?
I don't have iTunes, so I don't know.
Well, I do. Even on my Mac and my PCs, I have iTunes, and I've got albums on there that have been on there for years. And I'm going to play something I haven't heard in a while, and all of a sudden, it'll have the remastered album cover on it, but it's not the remastered album.
This is where all my albums go to.
Now, I don't have a problem with digital, so let me get that straight right off the bat.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not a digital person, but they have its purpose. Kind of hard to play an LP in my car.
Well, yeah.
True.
Yeah.
I do take CDs, but I don't always own everything on CD that I have on vinyl.
Right. And for me, CD is a completely different experience than vinyl. I mean, during the week, I usually have my CD changer. I got a 300 CD Sony changer, and I usually have it sitting on shuffle if I'm not working on music reviews. And because it's convenient, you're doing other stuff. You don't have to keep flipping over a record. On the weekends, I go to vinyl and I'm just playing vinyl, and it's more relaxed. I can just take my time, turn the record over when I'm ready. It's a different experience, and the CD is obviously more convenient. I'm sure digital copies are even more convenient. They take up a lot less space, but I don't like them myself.
Yeah, that's the one thing is I understand there are some people that have smaller spaces. Like for me personally, I can only accommodate CDs and then, Blu-rays. If I had a bigger space, I was talking this over with my girlfriend. I said, if we had a bigger living room, I would love to get a nice, decent record player. And then you find your, a bunch of your records, maybe like 25 or so. And I find ones that I want. And we could have a nice little system that we can experience these albums in basically how they're supposed to be done. CDs are just the next best way.
Yeah.
But I know there's a lot of people that, prefer vinyl over CDs and vice versa. It's like, for me, it's it's more of a space issue than anything, you know, because there's, I mean, I read a lot of what people talking about when they're listening to a vinyl of any one of the ones I picked. You know, I can only imagine how it would sound, you know, and you know, one day I'll get that record player and, you know, be able to experience these albums, you know, that I picked from 1972 as they were presented to the world.
I think vinyl, that topic within itself versus CD is a really tough thing. A lot of people talk about how the music is warmer and it sounds better. And maybe it does, but I don't buy into that argument. The reason I listen to vinyl is a lot like, well, let me give you a synopsis of what digital/CD versus vinyl is to me. CD and digital is like speed dating in a McDonald's drive-thru. Okay. Listening to vinyl is like making a reservation at a 5-star restaurant with your wife or girlfriend or boyfriend or significant other.
Right.
You actually take time out and you sit down and you enjoy the meal or you enjoy the music. I have a music room separate from my living room. You know, I listen to 5.1 in my living room, but I go into another room that's like a living room, but it's only for music.
Right.
And there I can sit down and enjoy vinyl. You know, in my office, I listen to CDs, and, you know, in my car, I listen to CDs or digital. But yeah, I mean, there's a whole thing. You can't just throw on a piece of vinyl and go mow the yard because it's over in 15 minutes, you know? So in that point, you may want to use something like Spotify on your headset as you're mowing the yard.
Right.
Though you may not want to because you could cut your leg, you know, get
right.
bit by a rattler, but you know, you get the point.
Vinyl's
but to me, vinyl also has a different representation. A lot, like I said, a lot of people say it's warmer, but to me, it's like the difference between B&W speakers and Pioneer speakers. I may not like the sound of Pioneers or vice versa. And I think vinyl versus CDs the same way. There's people that just don't like the sound of vinyl. They don't like the crackles. And if you get the crackles, it's because A, it was either a really bad press, or B, people just don't take care of their stuff. I mean, I can't believe how people take care of some of their stuff. I've seen people with brand new cars, BMWs, and it's all ripped up and it's got junk in it and stuff, and soda cans and stuff coming out from the seats, and it's a year old. I'm like, so, you know, it just goes without saying.
My friend way back, with his record collection, he would go through, you know, I think it hit at the time probably at about a couple hundred. And you go through each weekend and clean them with that, you know, that little block that has the felt on it. He would clean it. He would change the needle every so often, maybe every few months or so. He would, you know, because we used to go to Radio Shack and used to go and get like a little box full of these things, maybe about a dozen needles in there. So it was like, you know, he was like so particular with it, and the way he held the record, it was like gold. You know, it was just, you know, we're not going to destroy this thing. And the way he did that, my younger self, I stayed away from buying records for many years because I was afraid if I didn't do it that way, my records were going to get scratched and broken. You know, I was so afraid of that. So I was into cassettes, which for me personally is one of the worst medias.
Not worse than 8-track, not worse than 8-track.
8-track. That's my number one worst one, because especially if it's a long song and they break it up, all of a sudden you're going, and then
right in the middle of Boys in the Field by Boston.
yeah, that click is like that click.
And
And I'm like going, you know,
then it fades back up.
yeah, and it's like, okay, that was that really messed up. So 8-tracks I hated, and then cassettes, you know, like because you know they were compact, they're easy to take with you, and but then once the CD came out, for me personally, that's when I was like going, okay, that's the media for me, and it's been that way ever since. You know, I think mid '80s. You know, I was telling Gary off screen. You know, my caring about music started in 1980, but it didn't really build up until the mid '80s when I got into thrash metal, speed metal, and anything that was like that. And then I got CDs. I mean, my friend, he turned me on to all these metal albums, and he had a whole shelf full of different, you know, anything, you know, known and unknown bands that he had on, and he played me stuff, and I'm like, some of it it just, you know, went over my head. It was like I didn't care about it, but then a lot of the stuff he did, and again, he had it all on vinyl, and you know, and he was not as careful as the other guy, but he was careful. You know, he wasn't like treating, you know, dusting off if he saw like a speck. He wasn't doing that, but he, you know, he kept the records clean, kept his record player clean, you know, and you know, I want to get something like that down the line so I can experience, you know, some albums like that. And you know, I don't think I would ever replace all this with albums, you know.
Yeah,
that would be very costly.
It would. And I've replaced, okay, so I started off with LPs, I went to CDs, and then I went back to LPs with a lot of the same recordings. Now,
Yep.
Do I recommend rebuying some of the stuff? I mean, there's so much great stuff out there I have on CD. I would not rebuy it because I already have it on CD.
Right.
But some stuff never really sounded good on CD, and some stuff actually sounds better on CD.
Right.
And then, of course, there's the aspect that sometimes it's not available on CD or vice versa. But I've even bought new albums that, because they didn't spend the time to master it for vinyl, it just doesn't sound great. Or I've heard some remasters on vinyl that didn't come up to par with the original. You seem to lose some of the bottom end, some of the richness. But then I remember when CDs first came out, I remember, oh my God, what was it? It was like taking razor blades on a chalkboard.
Well, I remember you remember when the first CDs of Yes, I would think it was on before they did this Rhino one, the one before it, I remember it didn't have that great of a sound.
And some of the really early CDs sounded so digitized and so just synthetic. I mean, they sounded horrible. Some of the really
they were because they didn't have, the technology was new, and they were still learning how to use it.
They didn't have the sample rate down or anything like that.
No. It's just like, you know, Bill Bruford could play a mean ass synth drum.
Right.
But a lot of people today that are trying to use it, you know, they're using loops and synth drums and stuff because they're not a drummer and they can't afford to go out and hire a drummer for their album. But if you don't know how to play it, and you don't know how to program it, and you don't know how to tune it, because it's totally different than an analog system.
Right.
You shouldn't do it. And the same thing I think happened with CDs. When they first came out, they were just going back into the catalogs. They go, oh my God, we've released 3 albums. We need more. We can't just run the market with 3 albums. So then they just started putting everything on CD. Yep. And some of this stuff was so bad.
Remember when they did the on the back of the CD, the back panel, they would have those 3 letters.
ADD, DDD,
or
AD.
you know, yeah,
Yep.
it was like
Yeah.
it was like to show off. Oh, now you know the ones with DDD. It's like
Yeah.
you know, it's like, but they sounded so cold.
Well, let me ask you guys a question about the vinyl versus CD thing. This is something I've probably in the last 5 years started noticing. And I don't know, you know, originally when CDs came out, I remember one of the things about it that everybody embraced was we can get more music on this. So they'd throw on a lot of bonus tracks and stuff. And I don't know if it's the quality of the stuff coming out has changed, or if it's just my experience of it and my understanding of it has changed in recent years. But a lot of times I find that if you stick with just that 40-minute limit for an album, you get a stronger album. A lot of times they're putting so much extra stuff on it, but a lot of it's just filler. It's like 40 minutes sort of required them to pick the best stuff, and it sort of made for a stronger album a lot of the time, I think.
Well, you know, back in the 90s, you know, when CDs, you know, at their height, it was always cool to get something that was like almost 78 minutes long, you know.
Yeah.
But then some of those bands, like you were saying, is they were putting in extra songs that were maybe not 100% complete, but they just kind of polished them off a little bit and put them on so they can say, I got all this music for you, you know, the band. And then, you know, in the early days of the internet, you know, you get the different forums and people are bitching about, you know, so much filler on this stuff, you know. And then I saw one guy complain, it's not enough stuff. You know, you guys do 45 minutes. It's not enough. You've got to put more. You know, it's like, you really can't win with some people about that. It's like, but I kind of agree, you know, 40, 45 minutes, you put, you know, the good material on there, and the rest of the stuff that we're working on, you know, you could put it back on your shelf and then go back to it and make it better, you know.
Well, I think it's the attention span of human beings in our nature. It's not that we can't and we don't want to, or we think it's crap. I think the philosophy of less is more is correct. I would rather listen to a 40-minute album and go, oh my God, this thing is over. I want more. I want more. So now there's that anticipation for the next album.
Yep.
Exactly.
Instead of listening to a 200-minute album and you're 90 minutes into it and going, God, will this thing never end?
Right.
You know? And I don't care if it's your favorite band. I really don't. I mean, Yes Songs is one of my favorite live albums of all time. I cannot listen to Six Sides all the way through. I love the album.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, if I put it on CD, you know, I can't even get, you know, you'd have to do multiple CDs. So that, you know, I'd have to do digital. Maybe I might be able to listen to it all the way through in the background while I'm working.
Oh yeah,
but to sit down
on one of these too.
You know, so there's a lot of bands that have been putting out like double and triple CDs. Think about that on vinyl. On vinyl, that's like a 6 to 7 LP set. Who's going to sit down and listen to 6 or 7 LP? First of all, I can't afford it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
$200.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely want to be one of those guys that sits down and 40 minutes in going, that's it? That's all?
Right.
I want more.
Yeah.
And I think as humans, we want that. I don't think we want more. So it's like, you know, they say this about musicians that are writing music too. I mean, yeah, you got people like Malmsteen and Satriani who are so fluent on the guitar.
Right.
But what about those notes in between that they could have not used that let the music breathe? It's like a good bottle of wine. You open it up and let it breathe first before you drink it. It tastes better.
Right.
And I think music is the same way. You something to be said about less is more.
Yeah, I kind of get tired of those guys, you know, endless noodling and stuff like that, where, okay, that's fantastic. You can play like a, you know, like a god, you know, sort of. But where's the feeling in the music? Where's, you know, you got to have some sort of feeling, whether it's a rock or pop or dance song. It's got to have some sort of a feeling to it, not so mechanical. You know, it's like, well, here's what I could do. You know, you got the guitar player going off a million notes a minute, then the keyboardist does it, and then the bass player does it, and then the drummer feels left out, so he does something, you know, and it's like, well, that's nice, you know, but it's like, I want to hear songs, you know.
I mean, that's great in a live setting, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of do want to hear. I was listening to something today, and they were talking about how when you go see a band. Oh, I was watching this last night. I was watching a thing on Led Zeppelin. They were talking about the thing that was really great about Led Zeppelin is when you went to go see them live, it was like listening to a different version of the same album.
Right.
Every time you went and saw them, it was like a different version of that album because they were able to take something that was already great and reinterpret it in a way. And I think great music has longevity that way. You could take a song, Sting's done it, for example. Take Message in a Bottle. It's been redone as reggae, as pop, as jazz, as blues, as dance, as electronica. And every time it's been redone by whoever, whether it was him or someone else, it sounds amazing. You know, I mean, right. you have to be an idiot to screw it up, but you can, I guess. And I think, you know.
Yeah, you know.
Going back to what Ron said, I think it was Beethoven who said something along the lines of, to play a wrong note is human, but to play without passion is unforgivable. And I think a lot of those guys who are a million notes a minute, they don't have any passion to it. There's no feeling. No. They're just technical.
Yeah, and back in the 70s, I think it got more to in the 80s where it's like, you know, the Malmsteens out there that, you know, that they had to play so fast, you know, and they lose it. I mean, I had a couple of Malmsteen albums on cassette. I couldn't tell you which ones they were because I don't remember it because they were just like a blur, you know, of just noise, you know, and, you know, great musician, but, you know, there wasn't anything memorable for me. You know, I know some people love that stuff. They, you know, it's like that's their food of choice, I guess, you know, but I like something you were just saying about the different interpretations. Okay, I don't want to go see a band and have them play the album note for note. I don't want that. If that's the case, I'm staying home. You know, I'll stay home and put on the CD or whatever. You know, I want to hear, because I think, and I could be wrong, that a lot of stuff, when it goes to the final product and it's pressed and sent out to the world to be purchased, I think that sometimes some of the bands go, oh, I should have put something right there or right there. I think that's where the live thing comes into play, where it's like, now I can fully realize that song, you know, and maybe it was like a 4-minute song and then they wanted to put more, but, you know, for time constraints, they couldn't. So, but live, that 4-minute song could add a couple more minutes to it, to how they want it. And that's what I like to hear.
You know, for me, you know, going back to Yes, it's like I've seen Yes, I think I've seen Yes live 18 times. And I've got, you know, millions, well, not millions, but I've got a lot of live recordings from them I've listened to, some official, some not. And, you know, so I've heard so many live Yes shows. And as technical as they are, as amazing musicians as they are, no two shows are exactly alike.
Nope.
Every show has its own feel. Every show is a little different. And it doesn't matter what lineup it is, there's always some differences there. And I think that's one of the cool things. I've seen them several times on the same tour before, and it's always a different show. You're never seeing the same thing twice.
In my case, I've never seen the same Yes twice.
Oh, really? That's cool. I didn't get to see them. The first time I got to see them, I used to say I had the Yes curse because there were several times I was supposed to see them in the 70s and something happened and I didn't get to see them. So the first time I got to see them was on the 90125 tour. And I wound up, I really shouldn't have gone because I was probably contagious because I had a fever of 102 and I was sick. I was like, I'm going anyway. And I went, a stupid, dumb teenage kid, but I went and saw him. But yeah, I've seen most of the lineups since then, but I didn't see the original lineups back in the day.
I almost went to that tour. I bought the tickets for me and my friend, and he had the ride to go there, and on that day, the last minute, he says it can't go. He got in some trouble, so he had to go. Once he got home, he couldn't go out, and I'm like, great. So here I am stuck with 2 tickets. I have no way to go there, and there was these 2 guys with long hair, tie dyes, and I was like, "Do you want to go see Yes tonight?" And they go, "Yeah," and I go, "You get," I pointed to one. "You got $10? You got $10?" So I got 20. I kind of ate about $10 off of that. It's like it really pissed me off because I wanted to see them, but it goes to show anybody that's out there that's in their teens and they don't have, if you don't rely on other people.
That was actually one of the shows that I was supposed to go to, was the Going for the One tour. And one of my buddies had bought tickets and he'd gotten me a ticket and he was supposed to be my ride. And 2 days before the show, he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm not going to give you a ride. I sold your ticket to someone else." I'm like,
lovely.
"Oh, thanks. Great."
Something kind of a reverse happened to me. I was going to go see the Police in Atlanta, Georgia, and I live in Florida, right? So it's like, it's a 6-hour drive or whatever. And a friend of mine says, "Man, we should go see the Police." I said, "Yeah, that sounds like fun." He goes, he says, "Can you pick up the tickets and I'll front me the tickets and I'll pay you for them, when we go?" Yeah, I said, "No problem." So, and then we ended up buying about 4 tickets because there was 4 of us going to go. And then the day before he calls up, he goes, "Yeah, me and my friends, we can't go, and we're grounded or something." I can't remember what it was. Right. So I ended up driving up to Georgia myself. I was not supposed to be one driving. I ended up driving up there, got a hotel, and I'm out there trying to sell tickets, which I did, and I got face value, but still, it's hard to cover your friends, and then they turn out, they burn you,
Right.
Not always intentionally. I mean, I've had a couple of people that just did it because they were just being a smart ass, but
yeah, it's amazing. We have similar experiences from, slightly different eras in a way, but for me, I'm constantly filling in the gaps of all those years where I didn't really care about music. It was more for me like a background thing, and it wasn't really until the 80s when I started to care and started to collect the music. And like I said at the beginning, I limited it to 5 because I knew if we'd done 10 or more, it would have been several hours. And, but I'm really glad we got the chance to do this because this is fun. I mean, it's nice that we kept it a very loose where it's like we kind of went off on, talked about little different things, but it's all music based. So I kind of figured that's going to happen. You know, I don't like scripts. You know,
I don't either.
I'm with you on that too.
It's
And
just easier.
I'm also with you on the thing I think is one of the coolest things. And in my book, the book Poetry of the Air that I did with a bunch of interviews with musicians, it was literally sprouted from this thing, is that I think when you get people talking about something that they're passionate about, not necessarily something that they do for their profession, but something that they just really like and are passionate about, those are some of the most amazing conversations you'll ever have. And so I think that's what we did today, and I think that's great.
Yeah, you know, and I appreciate you guys taking the time out on a Saturday afternoon. I know you guys, I mean, geez, weather up here in Maine is not summer. It's not summer. I don't know what time of the, you know, what season we're experiencing, but it's definitely not. I mean, it's in the 60s.
Oh, I would love it there. I hate hot weather, despise it. We had record-breaking heat last week, and we're going to have some more really hot weather this week. Today it's a high of 79 in Illinois, but which is not terrible. For me personally, I prefer winter.
79, you say, huh? It's
Yeah.
90 something here today without the humidity. With the humidity, we're hitting over 101.
Where in Florida are you?
Orlando.
I think one day last week we were at like 98, and I think you guys were at 94 that day or something. It was like, and I think our heat index, it was like 78% humidity. I think we were at like 110 heat index. We were warmer than we were warmer than Vegas. We were warmer than you guys down in Florida. It was crazy weather here.
Well, you know, global warming, that it doesn't exist, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I know. It's like, I mean, I did a little something earlier in the day and talking about that. You know, it's like, I mean, I'm from California, and at this time of the year, it's supposed to be, well, at this time of the year, it's in the high 80s, low 90s, and here it is. You know, it's in the 60s, and it's like, I mean, California has the dry heat.
Were you down in San Diego?
No, Los Angeles.
Oh, because I'm from California originally.
Yeah, I kind of jumped around several little cities there in the LA area, and growing up, it was warm, but it wasn't until my late teens and into the 20s that we started getting like triple digits all the time. I mean, used to be once in a while to get a triple digit, but it's like triple digits from like July to almost end of September. And it's like, I don't miss that. I love it over here where it's, you know, okay, you know, I don't have the AC on or anything going, and I'm fine, you know. But then at the same time, winter, you know, got to go out into that snow, and it's like, it's insane, that feeling that cold burst right in your face. It's almost the same as a you know, burst of heat getting in your face. It's like, but you know,
but at least with the cold, you can put stuff on to warm up.
Exactly.
There's nothing you can take off when you get to a certain point.
Yep.
Exactly.
Our AC went last week, and it was the hottest day that we've had for the year so far.
Oh, geez.
And it was bad, and we didn't have AC for 2 days. First day was bearable, barely, till we went to sleep. Couldn't sleep.
Oh God, yeah.
The next day was so bad, I felt like I just wanted to heave, dry heaves, you know, just so bad. And luckily, the guy that was supposed to come out the following day, he found out how bad it was, and he didn't know that we were out. He just thought he was coming in for a service. He says, "Oh no, we can't have that." And he came out right away and fixed it. It took an entire day to cool the house back down to a normal temperature.
Right.
But Hey guys, I've had a blast.
Me
We gotta
too.
do
Yeah, I
this
did
again.
too.
Me too.
And
Absolutely.
thank you guys. I appreciate it, and hopefully we could do this again sometime.
I'm willing to do these with you anytime you want, Ron. This
Yeah,
was
same here.
Yeah, okay, that sounds great. So
and good to finally sort of meet you guys too.
yeah, instead of just pictures and words.
Yes, exactly.
I think it's called. I think it's called Images and Words.
There you
Images
go.
and words. There you go. All right. Well, thank you guys again. I appreciate the time, and I'll talk with you guys soon.
All right. Thanks,
All right.
Ron.
All
Thanks.
right. Thank you.
Take care. Peace.
Peace.